Hey guys, today we'll learn about combat in Civ 3. Get ready to get good. I haven't done a breakdown on this subject before, frankly there's not a ton to say, but that does mean I could do a full breakdown in this video. First, I should note that combat in Civ 3 is very simple. Because of that, defeat in detail is the most important thing. Simply bring more units to the battlefield, and you'll be attacking with full health units while the enemy uses damaged units. This is one of the best advantages that you can get, and you can get it by just having more units. We won't be talking about production today, but just know that this is by far the most important thing. This is not Rome Total War. Tactics will only get you so far. If the enemy is deploying far more troops than you will probably lose. The golden rule of Civ 3 combat is have more units. So as a result, learn how golden ages work. Use diplomacy, get military allies. Use upgrading to turn your gold into soldiers. Position your units where they need to be. Don't guard places that don't need defending. Plant your cities correctly, build workers, and do good worker moves. All of those things will help you bring more and better units to the battlefield, and if you do that, you will probably win. But we're not going to talk about worker moves today. We're going to be talking about fighting. The first step is to learn the basics of combat. Here is a chart of all the defense bonuses in the game. If you haven't already, memorize it. It will take 5 minutes. Remember the city and metropolis bonuses, and remember that units and cities still get the tile defense bonus on top of everything else. So, 50% for a hill, 10% anywhere else. You can see if a city's on a hill by pressing Ctrl-Shift-M. Next step. Understand that bombardment is good. Defensive bombardment is good. Having higher health for your unit is very good. The difference between a regular and a veteran is like a 33% boost to both attack and defense. Absurdly good. Next item on our agenda is to understand everything about combat. Again, this system is very simple, simpler than any other Civ game except for maybe Civ 1. So, I'll take you through it all. Imagine we have two units. You take the attacker's attack value, you take the defender's defense value. Add in any defense bonuses, you now have two numbers. You take the ratio between those numbers, okay? So 4 attack, 2 defense, we'll say 3 defense with a 50% defense bonus. 4 to 3, that is the ratio, 57%. So, 57% chance that the defender takes 1 damage, 43% chance that the attacker takes 1 damage. Repeat that until one of the units runs out of health and dies. That is it. With bombardment, same deal, except the bombarding unit doesn't take damage if it fails to hit. Use the bombard strength in place of the attack value, and then repeat this process a number of times equal to the rate of fire. Defensive bombard also follows this formula. That is it. That is literally all there is to combat in Civ 3. Even air combat is the same thing with no defense bonuses. Everything can be calculated using 6th grade math. As a shortcut, note that doubling a unit's health is basically like doubling their attack and defense value. Next thing to know, units auto-promote if they win 2 battles in 1 turn. If they win a 3rd battle, they promote again. This is underrated, and it's probably the most important small combat feature in Civ 3. So basically, it is okay if you expect to lose your unit versus the enemy unit. It's okay to have a 38% chance of winning a combat or something. It is not okay to lose 2 units, because then the enemy promotes and gets more HP, and then they will likely win another combat after that, and then they will promote again. So you should aim to do, on average, more than half the health of the defending unit. We're going to call this the line in the sand. Run the numbers yourself. If you're putting yourself in a position where losing 2 attackers to each defender is expected, that is unacceptable. You need artillery. Cannons, trebuchets, catapults, whatever. You can also use mobile units. If they retreat, the enemy doesn't win the combat, so they don't promote. Just do not cross that line in the sand. Now, if you didn't cross the line of the sand, so you don't expect to lose 2 attackers for each defender, you can go ahead and attack. Just follow the golden rule. What's the golden rule? Have more units. Have enough units to kill every single defender in the city. If you don't take the city, you just didn't have enough units. Okay, let's talk about the eras of combat. The first era is the Ancient Era. This is characterized by low mobility and the attackers being heavily favored. Remember, the enemy doesn't have walls or size 7 cities at this point, so they don't get that 50% defense bonus. Pop quiz. what do they get without that bonus? 35%. 10% from flatland if there's no hill, 25% from fortification. They could have walls, I guess, but you can knock those down with a catapult. So this means that attacking with archers into spearmen is completely fine, as long as you follow the golden rule. Remember the golden rule. If you are attacking swordsmen into spearmen, you're doing fantastic. In this era, the enemy has few roads, so if you take a core city, it often completely shuts down their ability to move around their troops and wage war. And if you take a city this early, it is unlikely to culture flip back to the enemy. So in general, the Ancient Era is a great time to fight. So what's the catch? Well, for one, you have better things to do in the Ancient Era often. But the biggest thing is that you often can't capture cities, they just get razed. To even have the option to capture a city, the enemy city needs to be population 2 or above, or have a border expand from culture, or have a foreign citizen. But in the Ancient Era, often all of these things are not true. Cities with 1 population will just get razed. 2 population cities will just pop rush, reducing them to size 1. The AI can even hurry production during your turn. I wish I was making that up. So pick good targets. Plant cities close to the enemy core. Don't let them plant crappy cities near you. Cut the head off the snake. Target their best cities. The capital is a great target, but any city size 3 or above, or with a border expand, is also a good target to get started with. Next era is medieval. The AI will start to get better units, so will you, but importantly, they'll be roted and better able to deploy their units. Also, they will have size 7 cities, so they now get the defense bonus. Remember, we're also using ratios too, so 4 to 3 isn't as good of a ratio as 3 to 2. Combat in this era is varied, and you can't generalize it. Pay attention to the numbers. Are you targeting something size 7, or something that doesn't get the city bonus? What resources do they have? What technology do they have? Fighting cavalry against pikemen is great. Fighting knights against musketmen is pretty rough. Although remember, knights can retreat, so even if you need a lot of them, you should be okay without crossing that line in the sand I mentioned before. Veterans retreat 58% of the time, unless the unit they're fighting is down to 1 health. This is an incredible bonus, and makes attacking into musketmen kind of okay. As long as you follow the golden rule. The worse the ratios, the more units you need to be following the golden rule. One big change in the medieval era is culture flipping. Enemy cities have more advanced culture. So, especially on higher difficulty levels, consider raising cities so that they don't flip back to the enemy. That, or just do not garrison more than a couple units in a city, since if the city flips, you lose all of the units that you had inside. When you hit the industrial era, things will grind to a halt. For the first time in the game, the highest defense value is higher than the highest attack value. Almost double, in fact, not to mention potentially a 100% bonus from having a size 13 city. This is a big switch up, and so versus infantry, you are now crossing the line in the sand. Having more units than them is not enough. The retreat function is not enough. You need artillery here. Lucky you, the artillery in this era is the most busted thing in the game. The industrial era unlocks railroads. Get railroads at all cost. Trade for coal and iron, conquer coal and iron, even plant cities in enemies' land if that's what you need to do. If you have rails, all of your troops can be on the front line whenever you need them to. You have no excuse for not following the golden rule. Artillery plus railroads will allow you to plow through the enemy's land very quickly. Use settlers to push your borders forward so that you can use the enemy's roads and make faster progress conquering their cities. The modern era doesn't change much. The ratios are a little bit better, but with size 13 cities, radar towers, and the civil defense building, defense values can get quite high. This, by the way, is why your big stack of tanks doesn't do much. Using stealth bombing missions can maybe snipe civil defenses or reduce the population bonus, or you can just use bombers and kill all the defenders with the bomber. If the enemy has significant anti-air, this basically just turns into the previous era. Use railroads and a big stack of artillery. So, that's my breakdown of the eras. As you can see, the numbers for each unit do not matter that much. Ratios of attack and defense values will change, and that matters a bit, but the changes in mobility, bombardment, culture, and defense bonuses are more significant in giving the eras their feel. Alright, let's do some bonus info. Armies are effective because they guarantee a win and avoid the enemy getting promotions. The AI will basically never attack an army that is at full health. You should do everything you can to farm great leaders. This means build barracks and use your elites on easy fights as much as possible. Putting down resistance is important for stopping culture flips, but you can only really do that, you can only really put down resistance by keeping units in a city. The city will not flip the turn you take it, so when you take a city, put as many units in as possible for just one turn in order to put down the resistance. A note on naval combat, killing enemy naval units is basically just not worth it. It's better to not build a navy and kill units on the ground. Use boats to move units to other landmasses and not for anything else. The AI is very bad at naval landings. 90% of their units will stay on their home continent. This means that they can't invade you, but it's also very hard to invade them. On Demigod, Deity, you'll be encountering stacks of like 20, 40, 100 units if you try to invade an enemy's continent. For naval landings onto an enemy's continent, bring more units than you think you need. Pillage strategies are good in multiplayer, but sadly they make both you and the enemy weaker. They're kind of the opposite of tech trading in that sense, so unless it's a 1v1, avoid using pillaging tactics. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Build more units, learn to calculate combat odds. Attacking at a disadvantage is okay, just not at a severe disadvantage. If the disadvantage is severe, use artillery or units that retreat to bridge that gap. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.